Assessment as an essential aspect of literacy teaching and learning. Assessment 2, Rachel Cauchi. Accurate literacy assessment is vital in order to help students progress to the next level of their learning. Teachers need to consider why they are doing an assessment, what is the quality of the data it will provide, and how will it inform their teaching to enable them to move a student towards the next part of their learning. William, 2012. Assessment for learning is diagnostic, ongoing, and formative. It helps students to develop their learning and provides effective feedback which moves student learning forward. William, 2012. It is a continual process of reflection and review which involves both teacher and students, which is particularly imperative for forming literacy learning goals. An ongoing process which embeds teacher assessment with peer and self-assessment to reflect on such goals, and teachers adjust their planning and engage in corrective teaching in response to formative assessment. William, 2012. Assessment for learning helps students to understand that becoming literate is an in-depth process where skills are continually developing and refining. Skills must be built upon, which means that there must be an accurate measurement to ensure that teachers can help to move students to the next level. Teachers can use this information to effectively differentiate their instruction. Menzies, Mojave, and Lewis, 2008. Assessment of learning is summative and used for providing evidence of achievement. Teacher-based assessment, which may be criterion-based and connective to curriculum outcomes, compares achievement to that of others. Teacher judgment in relation to national and state benchmarks and standards, William, 2012. The goal of learning is deep understanding. Therefore, formative assessment should help students achieve this. The relationship would be balanced to ensure that we are progressing through learning whilst monitoring outcomes. Brady and Kennedy, 2012. Assessment of learning helps us to support teachers with standardized measures, such as decoding level or comprehension level. When assessment for and of learning are used hand in hand in literacy assessment, we get a full picture of the complex skills that students have in reading, writing, and oral language. Given that becoming literate is such a complex process, teachers need to ensure that they are going to assess skills across all levels of literacy. These skills could also be assessed according to a child's ability and stage of learning and not chronological age or year level. There are many skills which are important, some of which are phonemic awareness, vocabulary development, and comprehension. Assessing phonemic awareness. Phonemic awareness is a component of a larger umbrella of phonological awareness. Phonemic awareness requires us to hear, identify, and manipulate individual sounds in words. Condra, 2017. Within the stages of literacy development, phonemic awareness connects to the emergent and early stage. It is vital to assess a child's phonemic awareness in the early emergent stages of literacy, as good phonemic awareness, especially sound blending, segmentation, and manipulation, is the strongest precursor to reading success. Assessing phonemic awareness is in a range of different formative and summative styles can help prevent at-risk children from falling further behind. Elements of phonological awareness need to be in place and explicitly taught before looking at phoneme grapheme correspondence. Kennedy et al., 2012. If you refer to this graphic, you can see that although this is an umbrella of phonological awareness, phonemic awareness happens later on in the early and emergent stages. There's limited need for assessment in the transitional and extending stages as the readers are already fluent. Hill, 2012. Informal and formal assessment, phonemic awareness. An example of a formal assessment for phonemic awareness is the PAST test. The PASS test can assess a child's ability to segment individual phonemes, as well as phoneme manipulation tasks such as deletion and substitution. Kilpatrick, 2003. An example of this in the test is to ask children to say the word stop without the s. An example of an informal assessment can be clapping and segmentation task. Children can play games which are then they're asked to segment phonemes in an informal and non-confrontational way. Kennedy et al. 2008 suggests that the most success with games and observational notes. Assessing vocabulary. The words in our vocabulary are the building blocks to understanding and expressing ideas. As children are exposed to complex language, they begin to use more advanced vocabulary. They also begin to use more complex words and explain concepts, describe their observations and make predictions. Department of Education, 2020. Vocabulary development influences the complexities and nuances of children's thinking and how they will understand printed text. Sinatra, Barusco and Daysanger, 2011. Vocabulary development helps us to assess subject-specific content. Vocabulary development also occurs through all stages of literacy development. In the early stages, we have 10 to 50 words, with 130,000 words in the extending. Department of Education, 2020. Assessment of vocabulary words should be linked to a text to ensure that the content is therefore being applied to different points of meaning. Dale, 1965. Informal and formal assessment of vocabulary. An example of a formal assessment of vocabulary is the PAT-R vocabulary test from ACER 2020. The skills assessed are meanings of words, recognizing synonyms, understanding the context that affects meaning, categorizing and ordering words, recognizing root words, and understanding how affixes change meaning. ACER 2020. If a child needs 95% of word knowledge to effectively comprehend a text, this test becomes vitally important. Kennedy et al. An informal example of vocabulary tests could be reading logs, word banks, student-made dictionaries, or just observations of word knowledge during readings, such as this graphic here. Assessing comprehension. Deep comprehension is vital for understanding and making meaning. Kennedy et al. 2008. Comprehension can be connected to all stages of literacy, but more formally assessed in the emergent right through to the transitional stage, Hill 2012. In the emergent stage, there could be a simple retell of a story in order to get effective comprehension. Translating through to the transitional stage where you're going to be assessing the various comprehension strategies that you see there on my right, Hill 2012. In the extending stage, rich mentor texts provide exposure to deeper themes and complex themes, and the students applies these complex themes independently. Informal and formal assessment comprehension. An example of a formal assessment is the probe test by ACER 2020. This is effective as it tests a range of comprehension strategies accurately, such as literal, inferential, and evaluation, thus driving teaching and informing future groupings. An example of an informal assessment is observation during teaching time. So during a guided or independent reading, the teacher could be assessing by questioning the student, retellings, reflections of the text, and reading logs recorded after independent reading. The benefits and challenges of formal literacy assessment. The benefit of formal literacy assessment is that the assessment is mapped closely to curriculum outcomes, which helps to inform teaching. Jackson, Adams and Turner, 2017. An example of a challenge within formal literacy assessment is one within running records. where students are in a running record style of test are asked to guess using a picture, and there is a high reliance on sight words and using a sight bank which does not assess phonemic or any phonological skills. CIMA 2020. Benefits and limitations of informal literacy assessment. One benefit of informal literacy assessment is that students are able to negotiate their assessment and have opportunities to show learning in a different way. Brady and Kennedy 2012. It provides students with an informal tool like a reading reflection. Benefits and limitations of informal literacy assessment. One of the benefits of informal literacy assessment is that students can negotiate assessment and have more opportunities to show learning in different ways. Brady and Kennedy, 2012. If you provide students with an informal tool like a reading reflection, it provides the child with an ownership over their learning as they are involved in the assessment process. A challenge of informal literacy assessment is that it relies heavily on teacher interpretation and judgment and does not always align with curriculum outcomes. Observations and anecdotal notes are just that. They are not to be used alone and should be used in conjunction with other assessments. William, 2012. Reflections on new learning. Effective assessment has meant providing students with multiple exposures to given content, with multiple opportunities to show what they know in many different ways. This unit has helped me to see that this is indeed the right approach. Balance is the key. There is no need to demonize standardized testing, as it is there to inform our teaching, as long as we use the data along with other informal assessments to paint a picture of the child's literacy capability. This module has helped me to remember how complex literacy learning is and how students must progress efficiently and effectively through stages in order to become a literate member of society. As we limit ourselves to one kind of assessment or rely heavily on one approach, there could be aspects of a child's literacy development we are missing. Being successful in literacy is imperative, and we must get it right in order to set up students for a lifetime of success in a 21st century world. Thanks for listening. The benefits and limitations of informal literacy assessment. The benefits of informal literacy assessment is that students can negotiate assessment and have more opportunities to show learning in a different way. Brady and Kennedy, 2012. A challenge of informal literacy assessment is that there's a heavy reliance on teacher interpretation and judgment. There is also an outline of specific skills which teachers can use to inform their teaching. The challenges of formal literacy assessment is an example within running records. Running records use